Doing a bit of research, I did speak to a number of racecourse bookmakers, and one of the topics that kept coming up was the drinking in betting areas situation. I mean, back in the day, you couldn't drink anywhere in betting areas, and now you can in some, not in others. Some bookmakers put it at a disadvantage. Do you think there should be a universal rule?
In the perfect world, probably yes. Unfortunately, it is very, very difficult. There are certain race courses within the Jockey Club who do not allow it, and that's not just a decision that's made by the racecourse itself. That is often been influenced by the local authority, and it's a particular issue, should we say, at Cheltenham, that I know a number of the bookmakers in both the Tattersalls Ring and also in the Best Mate enclosure have approached us a number of times about this. And you know, because the consultation that local authority and the racecourse have, they've made a decision not to allow it. So it's not an easy one. I think rules have been changed. So certain racecourses do allow it now, and that does make sometimes my role difficult when talking to people, because as you say, certain bookmakers, you know, you can be betting one day at one racecourse, and the racecourse allows it, the following day the racecourse doesn't. So again, I think things change on an annual basis and will continue to evolve. However, I think the Cheltenham situation is here for a reason, and the local authority are fully supportive of that.
Okay, another hot potato with some bookmakers, but obviously new betting areas are always a talking point. But can you reassure bookmakers that any new on-course areas will be offered to traditional bookmakers and not pool betting facilities that look like on-course bookmakers?
Yeah, and just to be clear on new betting areas are created because there are customers who are in that area, and customers ideally want to place a bet. Now, having a range of options for that customer makes sense. So if they can bet with an on-course bookmaker, that's perfect. If they can have a pool bet as well, that's probably ideal as well. So it's having the different range of products that are probably probably want to happen. I couldn't assure bookmakers that it's not going to happen. However, again, through the consultation that we have with these bookmaker liaison committee meetings, I'd like to think that, you know, we can talk about potential areas. And again, if they work for both the racecourse and the bookmakers, then we should be trying to encourage it, because we want our customers to have that option of betting with a bookmaker, and you know, opening new betting areas gives us that opportunity.
Another issue would be, I think everybody agrees that it's good for racing to have events to get more people coming racing, hopefully to fall in love with the sport. But the bookmakers' badges rise accordingly for the concerts, even ones, for example, Little Mix, that wouldn't attract a punting demographic. Do you think we could sort something out there?
Again, I think racecourses are becoming aware of this, and I mean, Newmarket is a great example. As we know, Newmarket have a number of music events, both on Friday nights and Saturday afternoons, and they have a different, you know, range of artists that are appearing. So, you know, you'll get an artist that very much attracts a slightly older audience, and I'm thinking about bands that historically people like Madness have played, and they have attracted an audience that do want to bet with the on-course bookmakers. There again, you mentioned Little Mix, that's an example, and they would come to Newmarket, and I know that the team at Newmarket, and Amy Starkey, who's the regional director for the East for the Jockey Club, you know, she makes decisions and reduces the multiple. So rather than charging, you know, 6, 7, 8 times the multiple, she reduces that multiple down to a lower number, so that helps bookmakers. So I think it's a case of looking at each individual artist on its merits. And if the artist isn't selling particularly well, then I think it's wrong that the racecourse should be charging, you know, a premium for bookmakers to attend. But I think at the same time, you know, when we do have a sellout of an artist, we need to appreciate that does justify the sort of premium pricing.
Okay, obviously it's not all about bookmakers, it's about the race goer. So how do you balance up what is good for customer service and disadvantageous for bookmakers, for example, free Wi-Fi, etc.?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, you know, Wi-Fi is a great example of how the world is changing, and many of our customers now who come racing both in the public areas but also in the hospitalities, are demanding good quality Wi-Fi. You know, very, very few people can now just come racing and forget about work and forget about what's happening out in the outside world. So they want to, you know, they want to be able to look at emails, they want to be able to look at social media, they want to be able to access websites. And it's striking the right balance. So yeah, I mean, you know, we at the Jockey Club have invested a great deal of money and time in good quality Wi-Fi, and we're getting some fantastic sort of responses from our customers about that. So it's just trying to, again, it's a balancing act of trying to ensure that if customers come racing, yes, they can access the outside world with phones, mobiles, and you know, iPads, etc., but also ensuring that it doesn't cause too many issues for on-course bookmakers.
As you mentioned earlier, one of your other interests is the tote on the racecourse. How important do you feel a strong tote-style competitive alternative is for racing?
I think it's very important. I think having a range of options for the consumers is really important. And I think, you know, when we launch BritBet in July on racecourses, I think you'll see a new customer-friendly focus on this. I think you'll see a new brand. You'll see new bets out there, and I don't think these bets necessarily. I think the win and place markets, I don't think you're necessarily competing against the on-course bookmakers. I think where there's some fantastic opportunities are on the more exotic bets. So, you know, picking 3 horses or 4 horses even, or even bigger numbers, and some of those bets like, you know, the place pots and the jackpots, and trying to have, you know, small stakes for big wins. That's what we're trying to achieve, and I think that's what, you know, I'm really excited about what BritBet will be bringing to the racecourse in July.
It's interesting you should mention that, because I interviewed quite a few professional punters, and back in sort of 10 years ago, the Scoop 6 was massive.
Yeah.
It got interest every week, especially when there was a big rollover. Somebody, you know, won it for £2, and it's effectively been killed off because of the way it's changed. Are there any plans to try and revive the glory days of the Scoop 6 or a similar bet?
I would certainly think so. I mean, I know, talking to the BritBet team, they've got some fantastic ideas, concepts that potentially, you know, will be launched in July, and if not July, at a slightly later date. You know, the Betfred have run the Tote Pool, they've had the Scoop 6. You know, they've chosen a strategy with that bet. You know, but it's certainly not as common to see big wins with the Scoop 6 as there were a number of years ago, which I think is disappointing. So I think BritBet will certainly, you know, relook at it, and there'll be a new product out there which I'm sure will be fantastic for customers.
Recently, there's been criticism of bookmakers, and I must say quite often isolated cases. But do you accept that bookmakers, like any other business, and that supply and demand plays a big part in decisions on the margins that they work to?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would fully support the on-course market here, because I think the value that you get in the betting ring is as strong as it's ever been. You know, I hear lots of people saying, well, it's the same price, every bookmaker has got the same price. I don't agree with that at all. I think if you look hard enough and you work hard enough, you will find different prices, and there are certain bookmakers who have a view on certain horses, so they're prepared to lay that at a bigger price than others. So I would strongly refute that claim. But I think they do need to keep monitoring, you know, the betting percentages. You know, I think generally we have I'm very pleased the way that bookmakers bet across the Jockey Club. I don't have any issues, and if I did, I would speak to them and talk to the individuals concerned to say, look, we just need to be very careful about this. We need to monitor it very closely, because, you know, it's a very fine line between betting to, you know, an aggressive margin or a high margin to sort of abusing the customers. So I think it's one that just needs to be monitored very closely. Okay,
so this is following on from that, really. How do you feel about the Horse Race Bettors Forum?
I think the HBF have certainly got a role to play. I think, you know, they're doing some very good work behind the scenes, which is fantastic. And I think, you know, I would fully support what they're trying to achieve. But I'd also say they just need to be quite careful. Some of the, I know there was the issue at Foss Lass regarding the betting percentage at Foss Lass. I thought some of the language that was being used by the HBF was wrong. It shouldn't have been being used. I think there are, certainly if that would have happened across a Jockey Club course, I'd have liked to have been involved, and I'd have spoken to the bookmakers involved. But yeah, I think there is certainly a role for a group to look after punters sort of and what they're looking to achieve. So I certainly think there's a role for them to play. But working with the race courses, working with the on-course bookmakers, I think is important, and not just being somebody to bash people over the head.